the country has developed so quickly, so dramatically. Admittedly, as I understand it, there was a large number of young Chinese people who were sent abroad, and particularly to the United States, and some to France, like Mr. Chen Tzu. He was in Paris. And I'm involved, as you may know, I'm involved in some type of research in Guangzhou Medical University, where there is a center now, as I mentioned at the end of my presentation, where we collaborate very strongly, decisively, between the Chinese and the French. And my feeling, my impression is that China is progressing extremely quickly now. Extremely quickly, and particularly it has in many aspects, it has now very good techniques, and very good in bioinformatics, for instance, in computer science, and also in medicine. It has made enormous progress. And I would say that it is now sort of at the level of the Western world in terms of doing science, and also in Asia of Japan. So I'm both impressed and I'm confident for the future.
So what's the challenge of?
The challenge is the same in every country. It's not a particular challenge for China. It is, the techniques have evolved dramatically. I can say, if you want me that example, biology, life sciences, which is my field, has changed more since 1960 and now. The progress has been more important than between the warring kingdoms and 1980. It's an enormous progress. So this is a challenge for all of us.
Of course.
Number one, it's very difficult. There was a time when scientists were able to know nearly everything which is known. 19th century, 18th, 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. But now the amount of knowledge has become enormous. And the number of people who are working has also become very high, very high. So the challenges are, number one, to be present, to have personal new ideas. And number two, to have the equipment and to have the money to do that. And this seems for me to be the case in China more than in many Western countries. Your government supports science, I find, more directly and more strongly than is the case in Western countries. And another challenge is, of course, to respect very strict conditions of work. Not wanting to go too quickly and then sort of being a little bit sloppy. You see what I mean? It's like when you prepare food. If you do it too quickly, the food is not good. You have to do it slowly. And so that's a challenge. But again, it's a challenge for every country, not particular for China.
To keep sure the quality, right?
The quality, exactly the quality, the control. And the organization of science in China that I'm not so totally familiar with yet, but I will, during the next months, I will know more. But I think that I would say, to summarize this in simple terms, China has spectacularly, in 40 years, covered all its backlog, which was due to various conditions which you know better than I. And now it has reached the level of high competition with the Western world, to take that example. And and this is particularly striking for me. I've been very often in Russia. I was in Russia again in 1990 when there was the change in Russia, as you may know. And the Russians have not, they were very good scientists, but they have not kept up And they have been going a little bit down, except in some areas, yes.
Yeah.
Whereas China has managed now to be present in nearly every field, to support nearly every field, and to be now a real player in the international community.
So I think I will follow my next question, because two Chinese American scientists achieved the breakthrough prize this year, Xiaowei Zhuang and James Chen. And James Chen said that actually scientists doesn't have the science doesn't have the border or the boundaries. The disease is our enemy together. So from your observation for China, how to keep balance between the intellectual properties and the scientific innovation and sharing the data and the knowledge?
I know James Chen very well, so I'm a little bit surprised by your question. I'm not sure if I really get the nuance. What did he want to say?
Because maybe some people said China, the government of China sent the scientists or the young people to America or to France to get a lot of knowledge, and then they come back to China. Maybe sometimes.
Well, let me say, to get a lot of knowledge, but more than knowledge, to get trained in the way you
to
work.
Get trained. Yeah.
So you couldn't say that they come back with the data. The data belong to the laboratory where they were produced, but they come back. They are formed, they are trained, and they do now in China their own work, and which is of high quality. For instance, if you look at two journals which I read every week, which is Science and Nature, those are among the best journals. You see that now there are many publications signed purely by Chinese people working in China. And not only Sino-American or Sino-French or so on. So that's one aspect of the question. What else did you want to know?
Maybe some countries actually, like Western countries, criticize this way. Maybe some scientists will, get some data from other countries.
Yeah, but that for sure that has occurred over long periods in everywhere. I mean, that's not new for this problem. So let's say, apart from the fact that many Western people now think that as China puts more efforts into science, more money, they become jealous a little bit. But on the other hand, I don't think that I'm aware that in technology there is a feeling in the United States and in Europe that occasionally China has benefited from importing not only the cars, which they do not do, but the technology, and particularly in some fields where there's very high technology. That's an industrial problem, and I don't know if that is going to extend. I don't think it is going to extend to science, because science is so open. I mean, everything one does has to be validated by publication.
Yeah.
Now, publications they're there. Everyone can read the publication. That is to say, each scientist, for his own career, wants to publish in a good journal. But you can only publish in a good journal if your work is reproducible. That means if you give all your data. And the way you produced the data. You cannot hide anything away. So I wouldn't say that in science directly there would be that sort of danger. I'm aware, of course, of what Mr. Trump says and what some of the other Western people say.
Yeah.
But I don't think that can be extended to science per se. It can be valid for some commercial aspects, you see, and it can be, for instance, I'm taking the example of France. In France now, the rules are very strict, how workers have to be paid, how they can, the protection of the workers against all various hazards and so on. and they say it's in China, it's much easier, and so it's less expensive to produce in China than this in a Western country. That may be so, but that's not my field, and you don't interview me about that. So I can only tell you that I feel, and I think, and I know I know quite a lot of Chinese scientists, and I know many Western scientists, and I feel they're all the same. And there was a backlog in training, because I mean, you came out of a cultural revolution. Yeah. Remember when the first time I arrived here, and that has been overcome in a spectacular way now in 40 years. And the basic intelligence is the same, I believe, for all humans. It's training and effort.
Yeah.
And luck.
Yeah, of course, luck. I agree with you. The scientific world is open to everyone. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.